powderhornartfair.com.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. A heat advisory in effect today as we expect cloudy skies and a high near 90. Tonight, showers and storms with a low around 70. And Thursday, sunny with a high around 84. The Great Wall Restaurant serves up bold, authentic Chinese flavors. From hot and sour soup to Peking duck, their Szechuan and Mandarin menu is packed with favorites. Visit them at 4515 France Avenue South or at greatwallrestaurant.us. That's greatwallrestaurant.us. Portions of the following program may be pre-recorded.
Broadcasting from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Welcome to the Gaily Show, the only daily LGBTQ radio news and talk show in the United States. I'm your host, John Parker, back from vacation, having to relearn how to talk again.
I'm exhausted from that vacation.
Jim Pounds, executive producer, with me here in the studio. Patrick, hey Patrick, thanks for keeping the fort down while we were out.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad to have you back today.
And thank you to Jake Wittig and Philip Anthony for guest hosting. It was really fun to listen to both of them guest host on Monday and Tuesday. Jake had a fantastic interview with Anna Deshawn, who is the founder of E3 Media. So you definitely, if you haven't heard that episode, please go into everywhere that you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc., to listen to that episode. And Philip, yesterday, great conversation with Tammy Nash, who's the managing editor of Dallas Voice in Texas, the LGBTQ voice of Dallas, Texas, and Texas, really. So if you missed that conversation, please check that out as well everywhere that you get your podcasts. Okay, real quickly, Queer Gaze, Gaze as Gaze, in the Twin Cities is a program of the Flip the Script Film Festival, and they are excited to be back with partnering with Imagine Willow Creek Theater to present a new queer film on the last Sunday of each month, and get ready to laugh, to cheer, and to shed a joyful tear as they celebrate queer films, new and old. Tickets are on sale at imagine-entertainment.com/queer-gaze. Big link. We'll put it in our show notes and on our Blue Sky. This Sunday, July 7th at 2 p.m. here in the Twin Cities at Willow Creek will be the 2024 French romantic dramedy musical Queens of Drama, an outrageous lesbian pop musical satire inspired by the pop frenzy of the early 2000s. Queens of Drama charts the rise and fall of new star Mimi Madamour, and her passionate, rage-fueled love affair with punk icon Billy Kohler. Over the course of half a century, we follow these drama queens as they top the charts and set sail on the course of mad queer love. Tickets on sale at imagine-entertainment.com/queer-gaze. All right, what is on the show today? In the second half hour, Christopher Kane, White House correspondent for the Washington Blade, is back. So lucky we can have him join us every other Wednesday here on The Gaily Show. There are a lot of headlines that I hope that we get to. I'm going to name them here, and hopefully we get to all of them today. But the Trump administration lost in court again, this time to Lambda Legal. The result is that $6.2 million was restored to 9 LGBTQ plus HIV organizations. Ozzy Osbourne passed away this week, and he meant a lot to a lot of people. Something that I didn't know was all of his LGBTQ advocacy, so hopefully we'll get to that later in the show. Just released today or on Wednesday, a huge climate change case ruling at the UN's top court. Epstein. So the Poynter Institute has some great reporting and fact-checking on the Epstein files and the story that I think we as liberals and the left need to be, and progressives need to be clear about if we're going to keep going after these files so that we don't get trapped in a conspiracy theory of our own. Hopefully we'll get to that as well, but if we don't, then we'll put the link on our Blue Sky account in the show notes, because you definitely need to check out this article from the Poynter Institute because they do A+ journalism. Up first, however, André Hernandez Romero is out of El Salvador. André claimed asylum from Venezuela for anti-LGBTQ persecution. In his first asylum interview during the Biden administration, he was approved to move on to the next stage, and that was a credible fear interview, which determines that an asylum seeker has sufficiently proved that they have either been persecuted or have a well-founded fear of persecution based on race, religion, nationality, membership in a social group, political opinion. He had no criminal record. He worked as a makeup artist for a Venezuelan state TV station, and his lawyer said that he suffered persecution both for being gay and his opposition to the dictatorial government of Venezuela. During his proceedings here in the United States for asylum, he was detained at a facility, wasn't allowed to leave. However, an ex-Milwaukee police sergeant had other ideas about Romero's asylum application. Charles Cross Jr. conducted an assessment of Romero. He decided that tattoos Romero had for honoring his parents and the Three Kings Day festival in his Venezuelan hometown were actually, quote unquote, crown tattoos that denote membership in the Venezuelan Tren de Aragua gang. One crown had the word mom next to it. The other had dad. Official federal guidance, by the way, says not to rely on tattoos in assessing asylum and other cases. Of serious note here, Cross Jr.'s record as a police sergeant in Milwaukee included criminal damage to property and drunkenly crashing his car into a home. He was placed on the Brady list. That list tracks officers who are have alleged credibility concerns due to accusations of past crimes, untruthfulness, bias, and other integrity concerns. So he's not allowed to testify in court. Because of his assessment, this put Romero on a different track, which ultimately led to him being included in a group of 250 men who were disappeared by the United States government in March, on March 15th, to the Sikot concentration camp in El Salvador. Kristi Noem, admitted puppy killer and Department of Homeland Security Secretary, refused to verify if Romero was alive despite repeated attempts to request to do so. U.S. Rep. Eric Garcia, who is also a gay immigrant, traveled to El Salvador to determine Romero's status, even if he was alive, and that country's dictator, Bukele, refused to give Garcia any information. Romero had no access to lawyers or his family. A photojournalist, Philip Hulsinger, confirmed to 60 Minutes Overtime that when he was given access to Sikot to take photos, he actually saw Romero. He observed Romero protesting, "I'm innocent and I'm gay," as his head was being shaved by guards. Hulsinger said he was crying and, quote, he was being slapped every time he would speak up. He started praying and calling out, literally crying for his mother. His crying out for his mother really, really touched me. Now, the Immigrant Defenders Law Center announced after 125 days in that concentration camp, they have confirmed that Romero was part of a July 18th prisoner swap between Venezuela and El Salvador. Actually, it was between the U.S. and Venezuela and El Salvador. I'll get to that in a second here, how all of this came to be. But the Immigrant Defenders Law Center represents Romero along with other men who are in that group within their asylum proceedings. They noted that there was no official government confirmation, but they identified Romero in news footage leaving the plane when it arrived in Venezuela. On his social media, Rep. Garcia posted, quote, "We have been in touch with Andrea Hernandez Romero's legal team. They confirmed that he is out of the Sikot concentration camp and back in Venezuela." Statements here from Lindsay Toslowski, who is the president and CEO of the Immigration Defenders Law Center. She said in a statement, "The Trump administration misled the public and our courts by claiming that the U.S. government was not in control of what happened to the men at Sikot, only to eventually, after 125 days, orchestrate a prisoner swap using human beings as pawns. So while we are grateful they will not spend another night being tortured in El Salvador, we also grieve the ongoing and lasting damage being done to our democracy by an administration that is willing to violate our Constitution, U.S. asylum laws, and international law." Now, what does that mean of how this all came to be? So the Advocate has some really great reporting on this. They had been following how this prisoner swap was being orchestrated by the Trump administration and how chaotic it was. So you had Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who was in talks with both governments to return American hostages from Venezuela and political prisoners, and also get the 250 men out of the El Salvadorian prison concentration camp. But Rick Grinnell, who is also gay, by the way, went outside the official channels and offered a different deal to the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro. And that deal was regarding Chevron oil rights. These two competing officers from Rubio and Grinnell basically brought everything to a stop as everyone was trying to figure out what the heck was going on here. In the final deal, 10 U.S. citizens held in Venezuelan prisons were returned to the U.S., and the 250 plus Venezuelan prisoners that the U.S. disappeared to the El Salvadorian concentration camp were released to Venezuela. It is important to underscore that Romero fled Venezuela for persecution. Romero is also the ACLU's lead plaintiff in a lawsuit against the Trump administration for what they did to him and the lack of due process. Unclear what happens next in that case. The Latin Times is reporting now that Romero has been on Venezuelan state TV saying, quote, "We went through torture, physical and psychological aggression. I was sexually abused by the Salvadorian authorities," end quote. Other detainees are also on Venezuelan state TV accusing Salvadoran authorities at the concentration camp of torture and sexual abuse. The question then now becomes what is going to happen to Romero. Geez, Jim, you look so bored right now.
No, I'm just letting you get. There's a lot of detail. A lot of this detail we've heard, but a lot of it is new, and it's a lot to follow.
Did you remember all of that?
Well, I remember the one thing you said that I don't know what I thought, but it's different than I thought, and that is that he's not back. At first, it was sounding released to the U.S., but he's still in Venezuela. And as you said to me this morning, the place where he was persecuted before. Yeah. So the State Department has made some phony thing about, oh, we'll protect them, which I don't trust for a second. But so I do worry about him. I'm glad he's out of, the heck hole, if I may use that term. But I'm hopeful. I'm scared for his safety being in Venezuela at all, frankly. I don't know what to do about it, but I guess it's better than it was. And I think this was, who knows these people, I don't think they've got a great grand plan that this was always their grand plan. I think they're literally pulling it out of where every single hour of every single day, because it looks like a bunch of idiocy that they then try to backfill and lie about and cover and all that stuff. So what I wonder about are the people we don't know about. These are the 250 that were documented. What about all the other people that we don't know anything about?
Correct. Yes, we'll have to, obviously, we're going to keep following the story. We're going to see what happens next with the case that the ACLU is bringing forward, as Romero is the lead plaintiff. Very happy, though, that he is out of that concentration camp, and we will keep you updated in the next steps of the story. We have to fit in a break here. Check out more progressive news and talk at am950radio.com and heartlandsignal.com. You are listening to The Gaily Show on AM950 Radio and WCPT 820.
When was the last time you had your roof inspected for extreme weather and hail damage? This is Chad, owner of AM950, to talk about the exterior construction company I trust, Snap Construction. If you've noticed new roofing projects in your neighborhood, your home was likely hit by hail last summer and experienced damage. Snap Construction is helping homeowners like you, and they're the roofing specialists I trust. They are the most well-reviewed contractor in the Twin Cities and have a ton of positive customer reviews from homeowners just like you. Even better, Snap Construction's installations are backed by a lifetime warranty, so you know you're dealing with a qualified roofing expert. You want to work with a company that will be here for a long time after the work is done. Snap Construction has handled thousands of claims and will help you through the process. Do yourself a favor and get a free roofing inspection so you have the facts and peace of mind you deserve. Call Snap Construction today at 612-333-SNAP. That's 612-333-SNAP. Or visit snapconstruction.com.
Food, music, family. Discover the Slavic experience. Saturday, August 2nd and Sunday, August 3rd at The Rock in St. Louis Park. Polish music from Polka King, Ukrainian band Yev, gypsy music, a donut eating contest, fashion show. Whether you're a Slavic immigrant, have roots in one of the 14 Slavic nations, or simply want to experience Slavic culture, don't miss Slavic Experience, August 2nd and 3rd at The Rock in St. Louis Park. For more information, SlavicExperience.com.
Hey, it's Patrick for Zero Res. The month of July is National Carpet Cleaning Month, and because of that, Zero Res is offering a purchase of 3 rooms of carpet cleaned. Get 1 room free plus $50 off an air duct cleaning. Maybe you're having a barbecue for the 4th of July. We'll also have Aquatennial coming up in Minneapolis later this month. You want to make sure your home is fresh and clean for your friends and family coming over to celebrate. If your carpet's looking more like a snowbank in late March, muddy, crunchy, and kind of mysterious, it's time to call Zero Res, don't you know? These folks come in with their fancy schmancy ZR water. It's like regular water, but with a master's degree in cleanliness. Zero Res can handle it all. Carpets, tiles, rugs, upholstery, air ducts, basically every surface in your home can be Zero Resified. So it's time to call the cleaning pros at Zero Res today. Schedule your appointment at ZeroResMinnesota.com or call 952-ZERO-RES and ask for the AM 950 special. Backward or forward spells the same. Zero Res.
Chanhassen Dinner Theaters brings you its most popular show of all time, Grease. You'll hear all your favorite hits from the Broadway musical and the movie. Join the whole gang at Rydell High. We'll sing, we'll dance, we'll bring you back to high school life in the 50s. Poodle skirts, bobby socks, the soda shop, and drive-in movies. Grease, it'll rock your socks off. Order your tickets today. Visit chanhassendt.com.
Welcome back to the Gaily Show. We're coming up on the bottom of the hour. The Trump administration has lost in court again, this time to Lambda Legal. The result is that $6.2 million in funding, federal funding, was restored to 9 LGBTQ plus organizations that were offering, according to their statement, vital health and support services for LGBTQ plus people, including those living with HIV. This was following I'm reading from Lambda Legal's press release on this, a ruling in early June from the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California that put in an injunction against the implementation of 3 of Trump's executive orders that were going to defund these organizations. And the court in San Francisco, the case was San Francisco AIDS Foundation versus Trump, that the court held this week that the plaintiffs were likely to succeed in showing that multiple provisions of 2 of the anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion executive orders and an anti-transgender executive order are unconstitutional. So Jose Abrigo, who's the senior attorney and HIV project director at Lambda Legal, said that we have confirmed that our plaintiffs, LGBTQ plus organizations providing critical services to their communities, have seen their threatened funding restored. When we fight, we win. We know the battle is far from over, and there will be setbacks along the way because the cause is too important and the need too great for us to lose heart. So that was a risk here. Was these organizations were about to just cease funding, cease operating rather. And so a lot of programs and services were going to shut down, including HIV treatment, prevention, sexual and reproductive health screenings, youth programs, homelessness prevention, mental health, employment, and many others. So the injunction basically says that the plaintiffs were going to succeed in demonstrating that the executive orders were violating equal protection, free speech, due process, and separation of powers.
That's great news. When do we ever hear something like that? Right?
Do you have a story that you want to report on?
No,
today?
I think that's, I said to you this morning, I think that's, you never get to say something positive about federal funding. And here's a case where it actually went the other way. I mean, I think that's great. No, I think that's fantastic. I think that's happy news for everybody.
Yeah, in a time when we don't get a lot of
Any
good news.
That's right.
So
I completely agree.
There we are. There's a successful win.
Good job
for us. Okay, so Ozzy Osbourne passed earlier this week, and I did not know, as I was going through all of the articles about him, his legacy and his support as an ally. And it actually went back into the 80s. So I want to pull up some articles here to talk about the ways that he had supported the community.
I'd never heard that before. That's when you said that this morning. That surprised me.
So there was one instance during the AIDS crisis, at the height of it, his guitarist made a homophobic remark during a concert, and how Ozzy responded was that he donated money to the AIDS, Long Beach, and other gay causes. The LA Times was reporting at the time. He was releasing statements most recently, or notably rather, in 2010, were against the homophobic Westboro Baptist Church. Remember them? Yeah. So there were, let me pull up some other ways that he was. The Westboro. That's what I wanted to. So the Westboro folks were using Ozzy's song Crazy Train as part of their infamous pickets. And he went on against them and denounced them using the song. And it's just really sad to see that he has passed away of Parkinson's.
Yeah, that's a shame. I really did not have that impression I had no impression of him one way or the other in terms of LGBT issues. So not positive, not negative. And I'm sorry that's coming out now. I would have liked to have sung his praises earlier, but I didn't know.
He was also an animal rights activist.
I knew that.
Even though he had that incident with the bat on stage.
Yes.
But sort of had a renaissance in the early aughts with his the reality TV show, which I enjoyed watching. I think we all enjoyed watching.
It was
we
wild.
Really didn't know how bonkers and fun Ozzy was to watch as an individual. I want to also get to, so obviously, rest in peace, Ozzy. You will be missed. I also want to turn to a story that is breaking about the UN's top court, according to AP News, says failing to protect the planet from climate change could violate international law. So it is a landmark ruling that has come from the International Court of Justice. And the court president, Yuji Iwasawa, wow, you're gone for 6 days and you just can't talk anymore.
Can't say anything anymore.
In the ruling, the court president said failure of a state to take appropriate action to protect the climate system may constitute an internationally wrongful act. He called the climate crisis an existential problem of planetary proportions that imperils all forms of life and the very health of our planet.
Yep.
It is a non-binding opinion, but it was unanimous by all 15 judges. And it is considered now to be a turning point in international climate law. It was brought by the Pacific Island nation, the lawsuit of Vanuatu, and backed by more than 130 countries.
Good for Vanuatu. Good for them. Yeah, we saw some of that where we were, where things were not following their normal pattern, and that's going to become the pattern, that there is no pattern. And we all see it every day. Most people I know talk about it all the time. So to do that, to deny that, to be a denier of that, is to put yourself and other generations to come in grave peril. So I wouldn't do that if I were you.
So the Attorney General of Vanuatu said in their hearings last December, the stakes could not be higher. The survival of my people and so many others is on the line. Part of the evidence that they cited was that sea levels rose by a global average of 1.7 inches in the decade up to 2023, and the world has also warmed 2.3 degrees Fahrenheit since pre-industrial times. So there is significant threats of the entire island chain being flooded completely. So their Minister for Climate Change is calling the ruling a very important course correction in this critically important time. For the first time in history, the ICJ has spoken directly about the biggest threat facing humanity. We are going to take a break. When we come back, Christopher Kane, White House correspondent for the Washington Blade, will be joining us. For right now, keep it tuned here to AM 950 Radio and WCPT 820.
Hey, Minnesota, it's Brad Friedman, host of the Bradcast.
Christopher Kane.
Christopher Kane.
Hello.
Can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Yes. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Good. You're just trying to get back into the groove of things when you're on vacation.
Just a warning, I just got chastised for not looking interested enough in what John had to say. So
he doesn't like detailed reporting, Christopher. So,
I was looking at my phone. Shame on me.
Well, let's see how good my detail recall is going to be today. I mean, fingers crossed, but I feel like I'm still getting back into it after a week.
Okay, so I am going to be on the fly here, looking through your articles. I'm looking through them, or started to right before the not the break. Or are we back already? No. Okay, we got 2 minutes. So do you want to start with the federal funding for HIV/AIDS work, the PEPFAR?
Sure, absolutely.
And then we can do Evan Lau. Lau, is it Lau or Low?
I think it's Low.
Low, okay, Evan Low. And then we can go to the Treasury Department.
Yeah, that sounds good. Is there anything else major that you wanted to cover that I didn't include?
I mean, there's so many.
I know.
Happening. Right. Well, I mean, there's the Lambda Legal that we just talked about earlier. They're fun. I mean, it seems like there's two things that got. PEPFAR wasn't funded; it was kept out of, right? The cuts.
It was ultimately saved. Yes.
Saved. So there's. I mean, I guess those are two budget wins, right?
Sorry. What was the Lambda Legal thing?
So they won their case. I think that came out on Friday or earlier this week, that they got 6.2 million restored to 9 LGBTQ and HIV organizations.
That's great.
Okay.
I hate to cut you guys off.
We got to come back
to the feed.
Okay.
Thank you, Woodland Stoves, for a great addition.
Come see us. We have over 35 working displays in our store, which is just off I-94 at the corner of Riverside and East Franklin Avenue in Minneapolis. Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces, since 1977, out of the ordinary products and services to make fire work for you.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. A heat advisory in effect today as we expect cloudy skies and a high near 90. Tonight, showers and storms with a low around 70, and Thursday, sunny with a high around 84. The Great Wall Restaurant serves up bold, authentic Chinese flavors. From hot and sour soup to Peking duck, their Szechuan and Mandarin menu is packed with favorites. Visit them at 4515 France Avenue South or at greatwallrestaurant.us. That's greatwallrestaurant.us.
You're listening to AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
Coming to you from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Welcome back to the Gaily Show, the only daily LGBTQ progressive radio news and talk show in America. I'm your host, John Parker. It is about 33 minutes after the hour. I'm in studio here with my executive producer, Jim Pounds. And since 1969, the Washington Blade has been the nation's independent source for fearless reporting and incisive cultural commentary covering the LGBTQ plus community. Readers around the world rely on the Blade, earning the paper the moniker, the newspaper of record for the LGBTQ plus community. You can find their award-winning journalism in their weekly newspaper, distributed at more than 100 locations throughout the DC region, and online at washingtonblade.com. And while you're there, subscribe to their weekly e-newsletter and check out their membership opportunities that make vital LGBTQ journalism possible at a time when clear, concise news is needed now more than ever. Christopher Kane is the White House correspondent for the Washington Blade, and he joins us now. Hey, Christopher, how are you?
Hello, good afternoon. How are you all?
I like you. We're all getting back from vacation, so we're all sort of getting into the swing of how do we talk about the news again, right?
That's right. That's right.
Do we want to talk about the news again? Also, is the other part of it. You've got new reporting though on PEPFAR funding that was saved from potential cuts to the Health and Human Services budget. So, can you tell us? Maybe we can start with what the PEPFAR funding is, and then how we got to saving it.
Yes. So, and I want to zoom out after we talk about PEPFAR and talk about kind of the broader picture for HIV and AIDS federal funding, both domestically and internationally. So this is a piece of that. So PEPFAR is the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. It was passed during the George W. Bush administration, and it is estimated to have saved tens of millions of lives in especially sub-Saharan Africa with AIDS and HIV work. So it was on the chopping block with Trump's signature legislation, the Big Beautiful Bill Act, when it was passed by both chambers. The Senate ultimately was able to negotiate with the White House to save funding for PEPFAR. So that was a win. However, at the same time, I think it's also really important to, again, zoom out and kind of look at the global picture here, because last week, I believe it was, there were a couple of Democratic members of Congress that wrote to HHS expressing grave concern about the defunding of HIV and AIDS programs in the US and internationally. And this is kind of happening on a variety of fronts. So you had initially, when the president took office in January, the executive order freezing the disbursement of grants and federal aid across the board. That was ultimately enjoined or stayed by the US Supreme Court. However, you also had the dismantling of the US Agency for National Development and the sunsetting of a lot of international development programs that are administered by the State Department and elsewhere. And then, of course, with RFK Jr. leading HHS, you have the shuttering of major divisions within NIH and CDC that do very important things like tracking how many new HIV infections there are and preventing new cases. So
mixed bag.
Yeah.
not even a mixed bag.
Mostly right, but mostly negative if we, to the extent that we support, investment in HIV/AIDS work.
I did not realize, and obviously there was a lot of, human rights violations, I guess, and war crimes that the Bush W administration did, but I did not realize how much work that administration did towards HIV prevention and treatment in Africa. And a lot of this funding that he did, that was really surprising to me that it came under a Republican administration. And Trump, I don't know if he built on that, but he definitely was committed to that in version 1.0, right?
In his first term, yes, he did pass he implemented the ending the epidemic initiative at HHS. And the future of that even is uncertain amid the restructuring and funding cuts and everything else. But you're absolutely right to point out that George W. Bush was very involved. It's a big part of his legacy. It's also a big part of why Senate Republicans moved to defend funding for PEPFAR. A lot of them were involved in the creation of the program initially. So,
do we know? Because a lot of them were also ostensibly involved in Medicaid and rural hospitals and SNAP funding. So do you have any insight on how this pressure campaign worked to, keep the funding there?
I don't have direct insight into how the pressure campaign worked. It is important to point out, as you did, that people living with HIV will lose health insurance coverage through Medicaid and the ACA exchanges and so on as a result of the passage of this bill. What I can say about the negotiations is that it appears that the White House was open to, of course, ultimately saving PEPFAR. So they went along with what Senate Republicans had wanted.
Okay. Well, obviously, we'll stay tuned to your reporting on next steps as this, it does seem that they are on track to just dismantling everything and recreating an HIV pandemic, both in the US and globally. So this was a shock to me, actually, too. So many things are shocking about the Trump administration, obviously, but to see that this was saved from cuts was cognitive dissonance, to say the least, at least from my end. You recently also had an interview with the Victory Fund president, Evan Lowe. And for folks who don't know, the Victory Fund supports, recruits, and endorses LGBTQ candidates for office at all levels, not just federal, but state and even local, down to like county level and city level races. Can you tell us about that interview that you had with President Lowe, if you will?
Absolutely. So, this came on the heels of the shooting, the murders and the shootings of Minnesota lawmakers last month. We're just in a time of heightened political violence and threats of violence just across the board. And what we know is that we're also experiencing a surge in hate-motivated acts of violence and threats of violence targeting specific communities. Mm-hmm. So what I wanted to find out is, has this hampered or impaired or affected the number of LGBTQ people that are running for office, or the conduct by LGBTQ people who are currently serving in public office? Mm-hmm. And what I learned is that, first of all, that Victory says that anecdotally and also the data they have supports that the idea that LGBTQ people are experiencing higher rates of violence and threats of violence. And again, we're talking about office holders and candidates, right? Mm-hmm. But interestingly, and this is really, I think, a hopeful message or note to strike. When you look at, for example, like FBI statistics on hate crimes, and recent increases in the past 5 years or so, you'll see that disproportionately transgender and gender diverse people are made victims of crime relative to other LGBTQ populations. So you might imagine that perhaps there would be fewer proportionally trans and gender diverse people running for public office, but in fact, that's not the case. In fact, the opposite is the case. That Victory is dealing with or working with a record number of people. And the other kind of major takeaway is that, a lot of these problems affect people regardless of their identity, and it has a lot to do with living in the digital age and the difficulty of protecting your privacy and your personal information.
Mm-hmm. So are they seeing an increase at all levels of candidates running, or is there a particular area like Congress or state legislators that they're seeing the greatest increase? Or are they just seeing it across the board?
So they're seeing it across the board, and they don't have a lot of really solid statistics here to back this up. They did say they do have numbers, but it does happen across the board. Now, they did specify that for major elected office, for nationwide office, the threats just tend to be more frequent and more severe. That just is across the board, tends to be true. But also, they've experienced things like, hateful rhetoric and yard signs and things like that have always been a problem. But there's been an uptick, they say, in the last 5 years or so.
Were you able to talk to him regarding his interview in, was it Politico or The Hill, where he was trying to get folks to downplay trans issues, particularly trans athletes, in favor of kitchen table issues?
Are you referring to Evan Lowe?
Yes.
I did not. Although after we wrap up here, I'm going to look into that because it's interesting. I mean, it's a conversation that's been happening within the movement and also within the party, the Democratic Party.
It was following on an interview that Representative McBride, Sarah McBride, gave, who's the first, for folks who are listening, first trans woman to serve in the U.S. Congress, House of Representatives, which was the same idea of let's stop talking about trans folks. Essentially is the idea here. If you're a candidate and you're running, focus on the economy, focus on the price of eggs. Don't talk about trans athletes right now. And I think for me, the question was, and Aaron in the Morning has a really great article that just came out Tuesday or Wednesday about how all of this anti-trans, how they manufactured it, these organizations, and how they created as an opportunity to go in. And they have how does Aaron put it? I'm blanking on the organization, but they basically admitted that they were deliberately going after trans athletes as a way of opening the door to go after the entire trans community and open the door in terms of all LGBTQ rights, going after them. So for me, I think my question was, with Evan Lowe's advice to candidates of, yes, you can focus on kitchen table issues, but how do you respond effectively to a campaign that is going to force trans athletes into, because they see it as a motivating organizing tactic. They see it as a motivating issue for their base. And so I'll be curious to see what the Victory Fund does over the next year and a half in terms of prepping their candidates, and also what the Democratic Party does in terms of trying to set the conversation, because they clearly, the MAGA is going to make this into an issue, and they've already hooked Governor Newsom, and they've got their claws in him, and he's doing an about face on this issue as well.
That's right. I do have some thoughts. Do we have time to address that?
Oh, we always have time.
Okay.
We've got a couple of minutes actually before the break.
Okay, perfect. So I was just going to say, I think it's important to separate out conduct on the campaign trail by transgender candidates for public office versus what people say and do once they're elected, especially if they're legislators. So, I've covered a number of campaigns involving trans candidates and a number of races. And what I can tell you is that I think that's kind of always been generally people's practice has been to not focus on trans issues primarily, especially with respect to like state and local office. They're worried about things like, I don't know, invasive animal species and, like clean drinking water and things that really kind of impact people's day-to-day lives. And, I think the trans athlete issue, I don't know, just my opinion here, but it's among the most esoteric things that it's really kind of an edge case, I think, especially when you look at the number of athletes that are competing at an elite level where it might, where there are questions about unfair advantage and so on.
Well, it's the great issue of our time, though, Christopher. I mean, the amount of legislation that state legislators are doing. I mean, the Trump administration suing California now. They, like Minnesota, California has been allowing trans athletes to participate for a decade without incident. And then you see them, basically extorting Penn University and making Penn write. They made them write personal letters of apology to every cisgender woman who competed with their one trans athlete. They stripped her of all of her records, all of her participation records. It's just this. I get where like candidates want to focus on water, on fixing the roads, on potholes and stuff like that. I just don't know if we have the effective communication strategy and political strategy of how to deal with folks who are going to force the issue. And I think that's something that we're going to have to be watching. And I just put that whole thing out there, and I want to hear your thoughts to that, Christopher, but I have to fit in a break. We're going to have more with Christopher Kane, White House correspondent for the Washington Blade. You're listening to The Gaily Show on AM 950, KTNF, and WCPT 820.
For a decade, it's captivated Twin Cities audiences, and now the cultural phenomenon Glen Sheen returns. This captivating musical by Jeffrey Hatcher and Chan Poling features strong performances from a talented 7-member ensemble and Ron Peluso's brilliant direction. It's a limited engagement July 7th through the 25th at the History Theater in downtown St. Paul. Get tickets at historytheater.com. That's History Theater, spelled R-E.com.
Your heart beats for generations.
Your heart is so many things. It beats all the time, and it works very hard to keep you moving through your day, keeping your thoughts clear. It's the most important organ in your body.
Every beat of your heart tells a story of love, resilience, and hope. Taking care of your heart means creating more moments with the ones you cherish. Learn more at hennepin.us/heart-beats. That's hennepin.us/heart-beats.
Greg Bakken here. I've told you about the out-of-the-world roast beef sandwiches at Maverick's Real Roast Beef But I haven't told you about their Philly steak sandwiches, turkey bacon avocado sandwich, BLT, crispy chicken, fish sandwiches, brisket, or pulled pork. Okay, you get the idea. They make a lot of delicious food to the same standard as their famous roast beef sandwiches, and now I'm starving. I'm going to go to Maverick's Real Roast Beef off Lexington and Roseville, and you need to go too. Check out their menu at mavericksbeef.com.
The Zero Res Master Certified Area Rug Cleaning Team in St. Louis Park is having the biggest cleaning sale of the year. Clean one rug and get 20% off. 2 rugs, 25% off. 3 area rugs get 50% off your area rug cleaning purchase. Pickup and delivery options are available. We're getting into the heat of the summer. You're going to be having barbecues, friends and family over at your house. Your rug called that's tired of being stomped on, spilled on, sneezed on, and ignored like a salad at a barbecue. We treat your rugs gently, even the fancy ones you bought on vacation and immediately regretted. Wool, synthetic, braided, patterned, passed down from grandma. If it lays flat and collects dirt, we clean it. Schedule your appointment at ZeroResMinnesota.com or call 9520-RES and ask for the AM 950 special. Spell it backward or forward spells the same. It still spells, dang, that rug looks good. Zero Res.
Turn to Auto Technical with your vehicle donation. We have families waiting for a car. You know, over 85% of unemployed are successful in finding and keeping a job if they have dependable transportation. A car plus a job equals a life changed. 612-919-5526. We have families waiting for a car. 919-5526 or autotech.org.
Welcome back to the Gaily Show. We are coming up on the top of the hour. We're here with White House correspondent for the Washington Blade, Christopher Kane. Christopher, before the break, I was harping on my concerns of how progressive, liberal, and centrist candidates are going to respond to anti-trans attacks from MAGA. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess had like a couple of quick parting thoughts, which were, first of all, that Sarah McBride, I think, caught some criticism by advocates in the community for her perceived lack of, for not speaking up enough or not speaking up vocally enough about trans issues. I wanted to note that on Monday she had a very rousing floor speech about the anti-trans military ban, and also kind of just more broadly, I think it's important that we don't hold trans office holders solely responsible or mostly responsible for pushing back when there are so few of them, and when also the Democratic Party is not totally aligned on messaging on some of these issues. So,
I don't think that we should be the ones doing this by ourselves. Also trying to hold Governor Newsom accountable. But speaking of, I don't know, that's not speaking of Governor. I don't have a good segue to get to, but I want to talk about your story related to what's happening at the Treasury Department, largely because it is headed by a Secretary of the Treasury who identifies as part of the community, but things happening in there are not so hot. What can you tell us?
That's right. So Secretary Scott Bessent, appointed by Donald Trump, is technically the highest ranking LGBTQ appointee in U.S. history, because the Treasury Secretary is higher ranking than the Transportation Secretary, which was Pete Buttigieg's role in the previous administration. So this kind of all was kicked off when the department changed complaint forms that are filed with the Office of Civil Rights, Equal Employment Opportunity Office of Civil Rights and Equal Employment Opportunity. Sorry. So we're talking about discrimination complaints. So essentially the forms were changed such that you can no longer file complaints on the basis of discrimination against sexual orientation or gender identity. So what I learned from talking with a former official who led the LGBTQ employee resource group at the agency is that this was merely a formalization of existing practice under Secretary Bessent's leadership. And this also comes amid a whole wide swath of changes where LGBTQ employees at the agency have lost support and protections across the board, whether we're talking about access to gender-neutral restrooms or whether we're talking about the fact that the agency hasn't done a recognized pride as it had in previous years. So it's really kind of a grim picture when you talk to people there. So
I don't understand. I mean, I understand what you're doing. I just don't understand how you can be a member of the community and so very clearly dismantling all of the infrastructure support for your LGBTQ employees. It's just.
It is, and to like the changing of the complaint forms kind of presupposes that there is not discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity, which is just, of course, not true. And that's actually borne out in the I can't remember the name of the big survey they do of federal workers at each agency. But the last time the survey was conducted at Treasury, it found that LGBTQ employees, especially transgender employees, experienced a lot of discrimination at the workplace. So it's a big problem that now is not even, you can't even really address it.
It recalls Roy Cohn.
Roy Cohn, J. Edgar Hoover.
Yeah.
No, I mean, just the people who are part of the community and either so self-hating or, I mean, has he, I get him confused with Grinnell all the time. There's two of them, of two gays who are just actively, willingly to harm. They can join Milos, Yana Lapoulos.
Right.
Has he given any interviews regarding his, identity as a gay man and how that reflects working within this particular administration, or is he just sort of not taking questions about it? Do you know?
Not to my knowledge, and forgive me, I don't recall the exact language, but it's interesting that when you look at his bio on the Treasury Department's website, I believe it lists, it describes his family as his having a spouse, kind of deliberately gender neutral word, and there's no mention of his historic appointment as a gay man. So I think that says a lot, and I think a lot of employers are reading into that as well, and I think it's probably fair to read into that.
I don't know. I don't get it. I don't get how they can serve in this particular administration. I mean, you see that there's the lieutenant governor candidate, Republican in Virginia, who's basically being accused of pedophilia and being run out by the current Republican governor Youngkin. I don't know how I don't know how folks can think like gays for Trump or our log cabin Republicans, there's any space for them within this party, unless they're basically just going to disavow being gay and do their own conversion therapy.
I mean, the argument used to be conservative. They were conservative fiscally, and that's how they sort of hid in that corner and said, we're pro-gay, but we're anti-government waste. And now that seems to be pretty sparse, in terms of how that doesn't even sound like a rational argument anymore, given what's being done to our community. But yeah, how do they do that? How do they, I've heard stories about Peter Thiel and his husband being thrown out of bars in San Francisco and some people in New York thrown out of bars there. So I like that. I like denying them, access to our community because they're not part of our community. They're as much of an enemy as an enemy, if I may state that way.
I don't necessarily disagree, but we're so thankful for Christopher Kane to give us his insight, wisdom, and excellent reporting every other Wednesday here on The Gaily Show. Christopher, it was so great to see you.
Thank you for having me back.
You can keep up with all of Christopher's reporting at WashingtonBlade.com. While you're there, join me in reading and signing up for their newsletter. It's very good. Very good newsletter. Keeps you up to date. And we'll see Christopher back here in 2 weeks. Thank you, everyone, for listening and or watching today. Up next on WCPT 820, Choose Views with Richard Chu on AM 950 Radio. It's the Matt McNeil Show. Stay tuned after that for Native Roots Radio. And then step into the unknown with Greg Bakken on Ghost Box Radio at 10 p.m. Central. And until tomorrow, we'll see you right back here, America, and keep it queer.
Keep it queer.
Hey, it's Tom.